All right, Mike Fanone, great to have you here on Mea Culpa. Thanks for joining. There's so much to talk about, so much bullshit. I just got to jump right into it. And I want to say this to you. Obviously, like so many people, I look at you and I see hero. I mean, you nearly died on January 6th defending democracy. When you see Trump out there right now selling this sort of return to power through fear, deportation videos, student visa cancellations, the global crisis and the chaos that he's causing with tariffs, does it feel like January 6th never ended?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you for having me, Mike. I am most certainly a long-time admirer, and see you as kind of a brother in arms in this whole movement to rid this country of MAGA and of Donald Trump, its dear leader. That being said, yeah, I mean, listen, in a way, January 6th never ended. Donald Trump won a second term. He pardoned all the, more than 1,500 Americans who stormed the Capitol and assaulted law enforcement officers, myself included, and got away scot-free. No accountability whatsoever for that day, other than, the accountability that I experienced as having been someone who, went to the Capitol that day as a law enforcement officer, almost lost my life, testified about my experience in Congress, and then have had to suffer the consequences like too well. Anyone that stands up and speaks out against Trump is going to be demonized and vilified and threatened and harassed, for all of eternity.
It's so true. I mean, they just don't stop. If it's not the doxing, it's the swatting. If it's not the swatting, it's getting packages and shit sent to your home. If it's not at your home, it's like the other day I was at a Rangers game. They actually won in overtime, which was unusual because I bring them terrible, terrible luck. In fact, I think the Rangers, their head office was going to pay me not to show up because every time I go to the damn game, they lose, and they're so damn good too. Suffice it to say, as I'm leaving, some asshole sitting in the section directly next starts screaming obscenities at me. It's like, I didn't come there to be bothered by you. I came there to enjoy my Rangers, but yet they feel that they have this right to do so. You get the same shit too?
I mean, almost every day. And pardoned individuals who assaulted police officers. And so why wouldn't they feel as though if they go out and commit acts of violence, whether it's harassment, which I consider, what you experienced, an act of violence, or, a physical assault, why wouldn't they feel as though, they had the protection of Donald Trump, whether that, is perceived or not, it is a reality. I mean, I had, it's not just me that experiences this. It's every member of my family. A few months ago, and I've talked about it quite a bit, this guy drove past my mother's house while she was out raking leaves in the front yard. She saw him make a U-turn, pull back around, park, get out of the car, and scream at my mother that her son is a traitor. And then he took out a bag of shit and threw it at her. So clearly this was a, thought out, preconceived plan.
No, I'm not sure about that. I mean, MAGA drives around in their F-150s with a pile of shit in the back, exactly. Right? Usually it's called their children, but fuck that. I mean, this was probably just a bag of something. Did you ever find out who the guy was? Was he arrested?
No. And I mean, that's been, I don't know what your experience has been, but, my experiences with reporting this activity to law enforcement and their response, I mean, I'll just say it, at best has been lackluster. I get the sense that they either don't want to deal with it or they feel as though I am well deserving of what I'm experiencing because I keep speaking out.
The problem, though, is if the other person pushes it too far, and then it gets to be a physical confrontation, that now has a negative effect, of course, upon you, as it would be for me, or really anybody, right? I mean, they feel that they can get in your face, and they just go right to that line before you turn around and you have the right to defend yourself, and you crack them right in the fucking mouth. I had a guy when I was walking in Central Park, same shit happened. I said, listen, let me be very clear. If you take another half a step closer to me, you're in my my sphere, and I'm going to punch you right in the fucking mouth. All right? I strongly suggest that you keep walking in the opposite direction, because if this is going to get physical, you're going to get hurt. All right? And he was a little guy too, which was funny. A little guy with a big fucking mouth. Yep. And it's funny, until it happens, and then it's not funny,
or until you have to deal with it on a daily basis. I mean, listen, I was at the Principles First Summit a few months back, speaking along with Harry Dunn, who I know you know, and Aquilina
very
Ganell,
well,
and Danny Hodges.
Dude, Harry Dunn is 6'5", and a half, something like that. He's got to be 300 pounds on a light day, right? That's after a cardio workout. Meanwhile, he gets harassed by people. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to imagine. The guy was a ball player. I mean, he's a big man by anybody's evaluation. He's a big dude. He gets harassed. Imagine someone like me who's 5'11".
Yeah. No, I mean, we were at this summit, and we had just finished speaking, and Enrique Tarrio and Ivan Ranklin and these other, Proud Boy ass clowns show up at the event. And just to kind of paint the picture for people, and what, I'm sure you've experienced this as well. The intention here is to elicit, first they want the viral moment, because all these guys do is post on social media all day long. Yep. And they want this viral moment, and they want to use your notoriety to make them more notable. And then, go out and sell the Proud Boy swag or whatever other fucking crap that they have. But anyways, these guys show up and they confront, Harry and myself and Danny and Aquilina, and they're all wearing body-worn cameras. They're flanked by, these social media influencers, right-wing social media influencers who all have cameras out, and they're trying to bait us into a physical confrontation so that they can do what? Sue us. Well, first of all, I got to let everybody know, if you want to sue me, blood from a stone. Blood from a stone. I don't have shit. But, where I'm from, the least masculine thing that you can do to settle a dispute is to sue somebody. And in an organization like the Proud Boys that claims to, worship masculinity and the idea of being a rough and tumble, rough, tough, right, character, the idea that all you do all day long is go around and wear these stupid outfits and film people and try to sue them, to me is the antithesis of that.
Yeah, they're a bunch of texting tough guys. Meanwhile, I want to go back and I want to talk to you about like shit that we're seeing every single day, right? Yeah. These forced deportations. And we keep getting reminded, because they keep playing the videos over and over and over again, the forced deportations of Venezuelans to El Salvador, to that facility, that almost like gulag. Not even their own country. They didn't send them back to El Salvador. They send them to, they didn't send them back to Venezuela. They send them now to El Salvador. To me, it feels like human trafficking wrapped in a campaign ad. I mean, they actually played it to music as if this was some Mark Burnett type, Survivor type of reality show. You see this as a warning shot of what Trump's second term is going to look like, or do you think it's going to be even worse?
Well, first, I think it's a litmus test. I think the Trump administration is seeing like how unlawful they can be and what the tolerance level will be from the American people, specifically from their supporters. And they, there's that, old quote. I'm going to paraphrase because I can't remember all of it, but it was like, at first they came for the socialists, and I wasn't a socialist, so I didn't do shit. And then they came for the trade unionists. I wasn't a trade unionist. I didn't do shit. And then they came for me, but everybody else was fucking gone. And so there was no one to stand up for me. And so now I'm sitting next to Michael Cohen in a fucking cell in El Salvador. That is exactly what we're experiencing. They're targeting a group that they have portrayed to be as, undesirables, people that pretty much every American could get behind. The idea that we would want to deport gang members, but are they? Because they didn't experience any type of due process. So, pardon me if I don't trust Pam Bondi or Kash Patel or Christine
or Holman or Tom Holman, right?
Or any of these individuals when they say like this individual is as a gang member here illegally and that they need to be deported. I mean, we have a process, and I'm sorry that, it's not the most efficient process. And certainly there's things that we could do, to legislate that and clean it up. But this idea that we're just going to throw a bunch of people on a plane, deport them to a country in which they are not even citizens of, to me is terrifying.
Because Mike, they're talking about doing this to American citizens also. I mean, they're talking to American citizens that these people are so bad. They're so bad. We need them out of here, even though they're American citizens. That the El Salvadorian prison is willing to take our citizens and keep them over there for fee, which, as Trump will tell you, is less than what it would cost us to house them in America, right? Meanwhile, what about the unions? What about when I was in Otisville, I can tell you the vast majority of the correctional officers were Trump supporters. He's now talking about deinstitutionalizing even prison system here in America, which is basically their job, which means taking away their paychecks, their overtime, and so on. And yet, as I wrote in my Substack, FAFO, fuck around, find out. This is what's happening. He is not on their side. He is not one of them, like the Proud Boys believe. He's not one of them. This is a guy who grew up with massive, massive wealth, accumulated even more, and somehow or another convinced these 77 million stupid people in this country that he's just one of them, like a blue-collar guy just getting by, paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah, no, I mean, he literally embodies the guy that, me and my buddies go down to the bar and talk shit about, every single day. The trust fund baby who had it all given to him on a silver spoon, who's never worked a day in his life, who has soft, tiny hands, all the things wrapped up into, this cartoon character that is Donald Trump. But somehow, the eighth wonder of the world is that he's convinced, these hardworking, working class Americans that he somehow speaks for them and is one of them. I don't get it.
Yeah, I just can't wait till they absolutely do that. They start closing down the institutions, and then you find all of these, these folks who are part of the correctional institutional union. They find themselves now looking for work. The problem is, what work can they possibly do? Security over at Walmart, security at CVS. How many of them do you actually need? Meanwhile, I want to ask you this, because here's another thing. We wake up in the morning and yet there's another global tariff war going on. Because Trump did. He launched a global tariff war, bragging, his words, I'll teach foreign leaders a lesson, right? But American families right now, the ones who are having the hardest time, many, if not the bulk of whom voted for him in 2024, are paying the price at the store. Meanwhile, he's there at different gala dinners, hosting himself as well for $1 million a plate.
Playing golf to the tune of $26 billion in
right?
60 days. Yeah.
These are the people who are going to pay the price, and he's still claiming that tariffs are going to be borne by the countries that are being tariffed and not by the consumer. My question I want to ask you, as a guy who was on the front lines when our democracy was in peril, how does this faux bravado, this fake bravado, square with the so-called America First lie that he keeps parroting?
I mean, I don't even know how to I don't even know what to say to that, man.
It is a tough question, right? I mean, he's sitting there, he's talking about this global tariff war. He's telling the American people that every day his phone is blowing up. Yeah. Foreign leaders are there kissing his ass, begging, please get rid of the tariff, right?
Well, I saw that he said that he had 70 countries that have already come to the table, but it's like Donald Trump is a liar. So how do you believe any of that? And all the evidence speaks to the contrary. What terrifies me as an American that lives paycheck to paycheck is that there seems to be absolutely, like everything else that Trump does, there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just like feeding his ego. Like I revel in the fact that like I can sign a piece of paper and send the whole world into turmoil, like you said, or that rather than go through these pardons of individuals that stormed the Capitol on January 6th and take the time to, as he said before, I'm going to, look at it on a case-by-case basis. Fuck that. I don't have time for that shit. Pardon them all. Put tariffs on everyone, to include countries that have zero population. It's, again, it's right. Just, it's feeding his ego. And I'll be honest with you, like, I think that the motivation here, and tell me if you think I'm wrong. I really think that Donald Trump is like, he's clearly someone who holds a grudge, going back to, the beginning of his life. I see this as an attack on America. His second administration is payback, not just against the people that he feels have, wronged him, but on America for not reelecting him in 2020, because he knows it and he revels in the pain and the chaos that he is causing in this administration. And he doesn't give a fuck who it affects.
No, he does not. And I've been saying this. Whether it was the first book that I wrote, Disloyal, the second, Revenge, he doesn't care. And you're not wrong about what he's doing as far as being a litmus test to see how far he could stretch the Constitution. That's what the entire second book, Revenge, that I wrote, how Donald Trump weaponized the United States Department of Justice against his critics. I'm there at 500 Pearl Street. I am given a counterfeit federal location monitoring agreement. It violates the very first fucking paragraph is violative of my First Amendment constitutional right. I said, I can't sign this. If I sign this, I'll already be in violation. I'm being straightforward and honest with you. My book, Disloyal, is already at the printer. And some of them are already on their way to Amazon or Barnes & Noble and so on. I can't sign this. To which they turn and say, you know what? Give us a few minutes. We want to make a phone call, see if we can't tamp down the language. Instead, they're working backdoor with this piece of shit, Patrick McFarland, over at MDC. He's a residential reentry manager who signs a remand order. And then the marshals show up, like what they did to that Tufts University female student who wrote an article She's a journalist with the paper that Trump deems to be an illegal protest. Next thing you know, you have 6 ICE agents, FBI agents surrounding her. The terror that she was going through, I know what she felt like, because these 3 guys from the Marshal Service, each one were the size of our friend Harry Dunn. And all of a sudden, they're like, take your shoes off, put your hands behind your back, handcuff, shackle me. It was a litmus test to see how far he could violate the First Amendment. It's really a very scary scenario. And I think all Americans need to understand just how dangerous this administration is.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, speaking as a former law enforcement officer, I mean, I think this is a perfect time to talk about morality in government. Specifically, the duty that these agents have to act in a moral way. I don't understand. I don't understand the mask wearing. How I could, as a police officer, don a mask, pull up in an unmarked car, and terrorize some kid who's only guilty of writing some op-ed, however distasteful it may have been to some people, to the administration, whatever. But this is America. This is how you feel that you're best serving America's interests as a police officer, as a law enforcement officer. I mean, to me, it's fucking sickening. And listen,
I mean, they rationalize it.
Yeah, I'm the first person to say bad people need to be in bad places. But that being said, we also have the presumption of innocence in this country and due process. And however, those things may be inconvenient for those of us in the bad guy catching industry. That's what makes America great. That's what makes our justice system the best justice system out there. And so the idea that so many Americans would be okay with just letting that go because they don't particularly like the group that's being targeted. I mean, it's terrifying because they're going to come eventually.
Yeah, they're cheering it on. That's the part that I find so sickening. They think it's okay, as they used to say during World War II, right? First they came for them, now they came for us, and it's just the whole thing I find despicable. Whether you like the content of the protest or the article, secondary. I mean, it's totally secondary, which again, it's like what they did to me. They didn't want a book to be printed and to be released. And so instead, let's lock the author up. When your car breaks down, you take it to a mechanic with no hesitation. You need it, and it's not something most guys can fix themselves. I know I can't. And men should think the exact same way about ED. But the reality is, you might be hesitant to seek help. Thankfully, through HIMSS, you can get access to personalized ED treatment without stepping outside the door. HIMSS is changing men's health care by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your own couch. HIMSS provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. You hear that? 95% cheaper. And the process, it's 100% online, so that there's no need for uncomfortable doctor visits. Just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option for you. And if prescribed, your medication ships directly to you for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. And with hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, HIMSS can help you find the ED option that works best for you. So start your free online visit today at hims.com/Cohen. That's HIMS.com/Cohen for your personalized ED treatment options. Again, that's HIMS.com/Cohen. And the product mentioned are chewable compound products which are not approved by or verified by safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. Now, I want to ask you this because you said before that Trump supporters have been radicalized by fear and by lies. When Trump posts ICE raid videos, like the way that people on the internet post these snuff films, what impact do you think that it has on the psyche of his base?
Well, first of all, the fact that all of these things are being filmed and hosted by government officials, whether it's Kristi Noem filming that video in the prison, with a bunch of shaven-headed, got prisoners behind her, it like she is using the credibility of her office to promote this type of inhumanity, and so Americans are looking at this, people that are pro-Trump, who support his administration, and they're dehumanizing these groups and using the authority of the administration to do so. And so when Trump says these are demons, these are evil people, they're poisoning the blood of the country, people are buying into that. And it's an unfortunate commentary as to, where we are today in America and the lack of compassion and empathy for people, even if, they don't share your, political ideology or don't come from the same place that you did. But that's kind of where we are.
It's crazy because I hear from so many people like, yeah, fuck Trendaragua, fuck MS-13. Right? They're drug addicts, they're drug dealers, they're murderers, they're thieves, they're this, they're that. And I'm not defending because Caroline Levitt, bullshit Barbie, says it best. There is nobody out there, no, serious, that there's nobody out there that would turn around and say, yeah, I want them in my neighborhood. Right? And I agree with her on that. But what I disagree is the fact that there is no process for the ridding of them. If they are illegal and they committed a crime, they go to jail, and upon the release, they go to an ICE internment camp for up to 90 days, where they are deported back to the country of origin. Not to, for example, El Salvador if you're Venezuelan, right? There is a major difference. You send them out of here. If they do it again, well, now that's where I agree with Trump and his policy that he should be speaking to the leaders of the countries, like whether it's Mexico or El Salvador or Venezuela or wherever. You keep your fucking criminals to yourself. Otherwise, we're going to have a problem between us, right? And they will do that. Like Mexico has placed a series of military by the border. Great. We're all for it. But show us a policy. Show us something that works. Give us a process instead of like what's happening now where they're deporting people who are not part of Trendaragua, who are not MS-13. One guy had like a Jean-Michel Basquiat crown on his shoulder. I think he's like a gay barber or something like that, right? And they deported him saying that he was that's the markings of Trendaragua. There was another guy who had a tattoo. They deported him, or they were going to deport him. Meanwhile, what he had was Real Madrid, where he's a coach, a soccer coach. So he had the Real Madrid tattooed on his arm, and they said that was like an MS-13 sign. None of this is true because they're acting too fast. In law enforcement, they always tell you, de-escalate. Yeah. Slow the fuck down. De-escalate, right? Because it's easy to escalate, especially when you're the one who has the power. Pull back. Come up with a process. Come up with something that's expeditious, but also effective and not interfering in the innocent person's rights. Like what we have going on right now, where we allegedly can't get this guy back to the States. But Kristi Noem could go there, as you said, put herself in a photo with a bunch of stripped, three-quarter naked guys, except they're in their boxer shorts, all without t-shirts on, showing off their gang symbols and so on, while she's wearing a $60,000 solid gold Rolex watch on her wrist. Play to music as she walks down in her skin tight jeans. I'm not really sure what this administration is trying to portray to the world other than there's something really fucked up with you guys.
Well, I mean, I think that that's part of the problem with having a bunch of unqualified people as cabinet officials. But, when it comes to these deportations, I think that it's, multifaceted into the purpose here. One, like we talked about earlier, it's a litmus test as to, how far this administration can go and push the envelope. But I also think that, by doing it this way, by just shoving a bunch of guys that, the administration has determined whatever, information that they had that they are gang members or gang affiliates and here illegally and deported them to a country that is not of their national origin. It's a way of kind of sending this message, like, we can do this. Like, we can do this to anyone. And then Trump following up later and kind of, opining that, oh, we could do this to Americans too. Like, that's part of the messaging here, is that, like, look, we're out there. We could scoop you right up off the street. If you speak out against this administration, we can do this to you as well. And, when it comes to the determining of, you were talking about due process and whether or not these people are gang members. Like, I have some experience in that and trying to make a determination for criminal prosecution as to whether or not somebody is a gang member. It is incredibly subjective. You cannot rely on a single piece of information. You're talking about, everything from human intelligence, tattoos, affiliations, doing, physical surveillance, all the things that Trump and the Trump administration and Stephen Miller and all these people involved don't want to deal with, don't want to do. And so they act in a way that, is violating, our principles as Americans and allowing people a process to do so and just shipping them the fuck off.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll tell you what I believe. I believe that Trump's administration are trying to turn cruelty into campaign content, into his administration content.
I mean, it resonates.
It most certainly does. Do you think that we're past the point of reason? Or you think that there's still some path to bring law enforcement and military individuals back to constitutional loyalty?
I don't know. I mean, listen, most of my former colleagues in the police department supported Trump. And I've heard some figures, and I think they're probably pretty accurate, that 80% of law enforcement and the military in this country supported Trump post January 6th. And so I don't know, like, I don't know how to explain that other than, they've bought into the bullshit just like so many other Americans. And they, I think there's a misconception because a lot of people looked at January 6th and they see these cops and they run to the Capitol and they're preventing Trump supporters from storming it, from assaulting, members of Congress, staff, et cetera. And they're like, well, these guys are like the stewards of democracy. Law enforcement are not the stewards of democracy. Law enforcement is a paramilitary organization that answers to whomever is in charge. And right now, the person that's in charge is Donald Trump. And so law enforcement is going to do what Donald Trump tells them to do. And that should terrify everyone. I mean, listen, you might have a few handfuls of situations in which people, like some of those prosecutors, career prosecutors you saw at DOJ, stand up and say, no, I'm not going to do this, and either be fired or resign or what have you. But it's not going to be a mass exodus, as we've seen. These things that Trump is doing are inhumane, immoral, and most importantly, to anyone who's sworn oath to the Constitution and to the court, they're illegal. And so we haven't seen the mass exodus. And at the end of the day, unfortunately, I think too many in that profession have just simply chosen their paycheck over their country and their oath.
I agree with you wholeheartedly that there is a plurality of military and police officers that voted for Trump. I wonder what their position is today right now as Trump is hosting, as I brought up before, these $1 million a plate Mar-a-Lago dinners. They're certainly not invited. They're not getting a free filet mignon from him. And they're the same folks that, as a result of these tariffs now, can't afford groceries, rent, or medication. What do you think that it says that MAGA is now literally auctioning off access to an autocratic wannabe, to a dictator wannabe? You think that these people are still gung-ho for Trump? Or do you think that they're finally getting like a kick to the head where they're beginning to smell the roses and they're beginning to understand the true reality of what's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in conversations that I have with like buddies of mine that are in military or law enforcement, the idea that the love for Trump is starting to wane. That being said, they're still defending their decision to vote for him because he was the Republican nominee for president. And so, the idea that he is a danger or a threat to democracy, I don't think is necessarily resonating with a lot of them. But listen, I mean, I tell them all the time, like, this is a guy who never he always gets someone else to fight for him. Whether it's in his legal battles or whether it's sending a bunch of hapless Americans to the Capitol to later be arrested and convicted, mostly of felonies, and have their lives ruined because he lied about the election results of 2020 and said that the Democrats were stealing it. Or whether it was a guy, the guy who said he had bone spurs so that he could avoid going and serving in fucking Vietnam. I mean, he's a bitch. And he's everything that American servicemen and women and, those of us that wear a uniform, in service to this country are not. And it's so abundantly clear that he doesn't understand that sacrifice and that willingness to serve and make those sacrifices, so much so that he actually has disdain for those that are willing to give up their lives. And evident by his statements that these people are losers and that they're suckers. Yeah. But when it comes to, the fundraisers and all that shit, I mean, you said it best. Everything about Trump is transactional. Trump is like a human transaction and would sell anything. I mean, whether it's for fucking one of those NFTs. I mean, he's like it's like a walking parody. It's absurd. But
meanwhile, but the crazy thing is you have all these people, right? The MAGA supporters, whether they're military, whether they're police officers, whether they're just the blue collar worker that is so knee deep entrenched into this dumpster cult. You then turn around and you have somebody like Howard Lutnick, a billionaire, lives down the road from me here. I've known him for 23 years, billionaire, turning around and making yet again a second stupid ass comment. The first was about his mother-in-law, who's 94, wouldn't worry about her Social Security check not arriving. Yeah, because Howard will cover anything that she needs. In fact, he already does. So yeah, but the latest one is that Americans should be making iPhones and doing this screwing in of the cards, the data cards inside these iPhones, right? The problem that I see is that all these billionaires that are now inhabiting the White House, whether it's as Secretary of Commerce or Treasury Secretary, whether it's Department of Education or whatnot, they're all billionaires. I find like the comment made by Howard to be delusional. And it follows in the delusion of what this Trump administration really stands for. You think that this is the new face of corporate authoritarianism in MAGA's America?
Yeah, I mean, those statements are, that was like the most elitist thing that anyone could ever say about American working people. One, listen, my mother, she was a child advocate in the juvenile justice system in Virginia, Northern Virginia, for her entire career. I think she worked there for more than 30 years. And she's retired, collects a small pension, but depends on the, $2,500 a month that she gets in Social Security. And so does everyone else that she knows. And she's not a freeloader. She paid into the system for 30 some odd years. And now, depends on that money so that she can afford to live. And she lives a very modest lifestyle. And again, so do all of her friends. And then, the idea that, American workers would be satisfied working for, what I would imagine would be pennies on the dollar to screw in little screws to make an iPhone is insane to me. And I have an even better example. A friend of mine that I've known for years, worked in the federal government his entire career, was recently shit canned by Elon Musk and Doge. And he went to a job fair here in Virginia that was hosted, or at least in some way, I think, put together by the governor here, Glenn Youngkin. Because Glenn Youngkin, a Republican and a Trump supporter, has said, oh, don't worry, like all of you federal workers, we've got plenty of jobs available for you here in Virginia, all as well. Well, he called me from the job fair, and this is a guy who, has worked in the federal government for more than 28 years. At the time that he left the federal government, I think he was making like $135,000, which, is not a lot of money in Northern Virginia. But the job fair, he said, I couldn't find a single job that paid more than 50 grand a year. So that is Republicans' idea of giving jobs to people that, have worked for decades, finally earning like a relatively livable wage. And now we're going to give you a job that pays you 50 grand a year and may or may not include health benefits. Get the fuck out of here.
It's really crazy, right? I mean, it blows my mind. I wanted to ask you this because you've called out the GOP for abandoning police officers like yourself after January 6th. Now they're throwing ice at peaceful protesters, calling it law and order. What do you say to those officers that is still backing this authoritarian movement?
Yeah, I mean, it goes
because
back
there
to,
are.
Yeah,
I mean, there are,
that,
and that they make me sick. To be honest with you, they really do. They make me viscerally sick.
I mean, listen, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say that I spent my entire law enforcement career thinking about, my oath to the Constitution and, what that meant. But I certainly have every single day since January 6th. And I think that's why morality in law enforcement is so important. And I think that, these officers, these agents need to think about what it is they're doing and whether or not it is moral and legal, because it certainly is not moral. It is probably not legal. And so these guys, they've got a responsibility to do both. But yeah, I mean, it is sick. So many people would just fall in line and do that, but not unexpected. I mean, I called this pretty much from day one that, come another Trump administration, I mean, you're just going to see cops doing things that are so outrageous, so immoral, so disgusting, all because, Trump gave them the authority to do so.
Yeah, I sort of sometimes just sit and I get thoughts in my head. I write about them usually on my Substack, but I'm trying to figure out in their minds, what's the bigger threat? Students fighting for justice or the oligarchs that are buying silence?
I mean, listen, rich people have been fucking this country up pretty much since its inception. So clearly to me, it's going to be the oligarchs people like, Elon Musk, who are literally buying access to power in this country, and changing this country from the inside out. And I'm scared that it's going to be irreversible, and that But I mean, listen, the idea that you can speak out against, or speak up for any issue, is literally what this country was founded. I mean, if people will go back in history and actually recall, how we got started, it was the idea that, we were being, our way of life was being dictated to us by somebody that lived thousands of miles away in another fucking country on another continent. And now we are having that same phenomenon occur right here at home. I don't get it, man.
Let me ask you this then. How close do you think we are truly to another January 6th style eruption? Every now and then, we're reminded of those many healthy resolutions that we've made over the years, like to lose weight, to exercise more, to eat better. But a goal without a plan, well, it's a plan that's destined to fail. Prolon's 5-day program, it gives you the tools to put your health goals into action with a science-backed plan that makes it easy to stay focused and to achieve real results. Prolon's fasting mimicking diet, well, it's a revolutionary plant-based nutrition program that nourishes the body while making cells believe that they're fasting. Researched and developed for decades at USC's Longevity Institute and backed by leading U.S. medical centers, Prolon helps support healthy blood sugar, enhanced skin appearance, fat loss, and improved energy and focus post-fast. Now, it all starts with their 5-day program. Snacks, soups, and beverages, all designed to keep your body in a fasting state. No guesswork and no planning required. 3 consecutive cycles of Prolon have been shown to reduce your biological age score by an average of, get a load of this, 2.5 years. And your waist circumference, by 1.5 inches. Prolon is fasting with food. That's right. It's fasting, but with food. It all starts with Prolon's 5-day program. Again, snacks, soups, beverages, all designed to make your body think that it's fasting. So let me be clear. I did the 5-day program and I feel much better. Prolon, really, it's not like any other diet that I've tried. Because you know why? It's not a diet. It's truly science. I mean, it was convenient. They sent me everything that I needed all in one box. To help you kickstart a health plan that truly works, Prolon is offering Mea Culpa with Michael Cohen listeners 15% off. You hear that? 15% off site-wide, plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe to their 5-day nutrition program. So go now and visit prolonlife.com/mea culpa. That's PROLONLIFE.com/mea culpa to claim your 15% discount and your bonus gift. That's prolonlife.com/mea culpa. Go there now. You think that the public, the press, or even law enforcement are asleep at the wheel again?
I think that undoubtedly at some point these protests are going to turn violent, because people are so outraged at the way that at the way that they're being treated. And I don't condone that, but at the same time, I understand. And I believe that Trump is waiting for that moment so that he can declare martial law and use American military against American citizens. And so I think that's the next step. I think that's the next escalation in this administration, is that he is, just waiting and hoping and praying for, some act of civil disobedience or disorder or violence or just, destruction of property so that he can send in the tanks, so to speak.
And assuming that meaning the military, will actually take the tanks, right, and start, firing on U.S. civilians, some of whom could be their own family members. This is really it's a crazy thought that this could even happen. Think about this. We had the hands-off protests, 1,200 protests around America. No violence, no destruction, no anything. I get scared thinking about that type of protest, but like where you said, where there's anger. Right now there's anger, but I'm talking about the type of uncontrolled anger that stems from your ability not to feed your children, not to be able to afford your rent or gasoline or electricity or your medication, which is kind of like where these tariffs are putting Americans. What happens to the person like your mom who relies on her Social Security check, who doesn't get it, who doesn't have a son or a daughter or a family member or a friend who's able to float her? Now they can't. It's either you buy your insulin and you don't pay rent and you don't have food, or you have a little food, you have a little insulin. So now you start playing with your insulin levels, right? And that person, God forbid, has a medical condition, or you can't pay the rent and now they're evicting you, and it boils over, like in the 1700s with Marie Antoinette, with the apathetic comment of let them eat cake. I think the real translation was let them eat croissants, but let them eat cake. I think it's really true. That's when the shit's going to boil over, and that's when people will take to the street, and it will be a civil war. It'll be American versus American, those that have at least enough to get by and those that have nothing. And I hate to say it, the bulk of MAGA are exactly the ones who are going to feel, for example, this unprovoked global trade war that Trump and his administration sparked. And I can't figure out why they're still in this camp.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've watched reporting over the past couple of days and the interviews with, people from Trump country and Trump voters who are like, well, we're willing to wait and see what happens. Their willingness to afford Trump leeway seems to be, never ending. And so I wonder, even if, even in amongst their own suffering, if they would be willing to, break from the cult and make the decision that, maybe they had made a mistake in their support for Trump. And maybe this guy actually doesn't have a fucking clue what he's doing, or he does. And it's all about, making their lives more difficult to make his better.
I mean, how much better do you need? If you're worth $1 billion, you can't spend that in 100 years. If you're worth like Elon Musk, well, I don't know what he's worth today as a result of Tesla stock and shit going to the toilet, but whatever it is, I would trade. I think he's worth like $300 billion as of today. You can't spend that in 1,000 lifetimes, even if you buy Buckingham Palace every single day. I mean, the guy makes $9 million a day from the United States in government contracts. I want to ask you this on that notion, because you, Mike Fanone, have testified, you've written, you've protested, you've advocated. What's next for you in this fight against authoritarianism?
I mean, collaborating with people like you and trying to right the ship. After January 6th, obviously I had no idea how difficult a time it was going to be to find, gainful employment once I left the police department. But I have not been able to find a job because people think I'm, too polarizing and they don't want to take the risk of hiring me. And, listen, I was a decorated police officer for 20 years. I thought I would be able to find a job. And so while I certainly believe in this work and want to continue it, I'm also kind of like stuck in this space in that, I don't have any other options but to continue, this kind of work and hope that eventually, we rid the country of Trump and of MAGA, and people like you and I can live our lives peacefully and go back to doing the things that we were doing before all this crap happened.
Yeah, it's very, very hard. I often say to people that I couldn't get a job as a greeter at Walmart because and even here in New York, being the former personal attorney to the president, being a guy who had my own massively successful business and a law practice on top of that, I couldn't be a greeter at Walmart because there'd be a group of people that will just want to flock to me to take photos, which of course, the employer's not ecstatic about. And then the other would go into Walmart, try to find an axe to hit me with it, right? Which of course is a major liability. So you're in the same boat as I. And it's a really weird fucking thing if you think about it, because as a decorated police officer and so on, it should be easy, for you. I do want to continue and ask you one or two additional questions here. What's your message, Michael Fanone's message to voters who will tell you that they're exhausted by politics? Those thinking it's all the same, nothing's going to change. Yeah, Trump is bad, but so is Joe Biden. So are all of them. What do you say to these people?
I mean, I think the one thing that I've come to understand in this process, because now I've been in it, 4+ years, is that, I may never accomplish the things that I want to accomplish in my lifetime, but it's still worth the effort. I've got 4 kids, 4 daughters, and that's the motivation, or that's where I found my motivation, is to make their lives better and to use the platform that I have to try to accomplish that goal. And so, stop thinking about the, immediate future and stop thinking about yourself and start thinking about the future of this country and the next generations to come, and doing your part. I mean, look at, you look at the civil rights movement, you look at, our fight for freedom, to establish this nation. All of these things occurred over lengthy periods of time. And some of the people that were involved for their entire lives never even got to see the fruits of their labor or the fruition of, of their work. And so, take some inspiration from people like that and do your part. Don't just admire me or admire, Michael Cohen for for our courage. Fucking grow some balls yourself and go out there and do your part. And I mean, that's the message. And the other part to that, Michael, really is accountability. I don't want people to forget January 6th, not because of the heroics of the Metropolitan Police Department or the Capitol police officers that showed up that day and fought to defend the Capitol, but because there were so many people that were involved in that day that weren't just those that stormed the Capitol. You had 147 members of Congress that voted not to certify the election. And why do I see them as, equals in the violence of that day is because, again, they lent the credibility of their office as members of Congress to the idea that the election had been stolen, knowing full well that there was absolutely no evidence to support that. And so in doing so, they allowed these Americans to believe, it wasn't just Trump saying that the election had been stolen. It was members of Congress. It was other members of the administration. All of these enablers contributed to inspiring Americans to storm the Capitol and assault cops and almost kill me. And so I want to make sure that we don't forget that when we do right the ship, we don't forget who these people are, and that there is accountability. And we could start by creating legislation that prevents people, whether they've been criminally convicted of it or not, who participated in an insurrection, which January 6th clearly was an insurrection, from ever holding office in this country again. I think one of our sins as a nation in the aftermath of the Civil War was allowing Confederates to hold office in this country. And it was a compromise that we made. We don't need to make that compromise again. If you take up, arms against this country, or you commit acts against this country so egregious as we experienced then, you should be prevented from ever holding any office, whether it's the fucking PTA, member of Congress, or the president.
Yeah. So let me ask you, because the hour goes by very quickly here on Mea Culpa, believe it or not. I could talk to you all day long.
Yeah.
In one word, how would you describe what the second Trump presidency means for the soul of America?
One word. I mean, that fucked. I just I think if I had to describe where we're at today, we're fucked.
That's listen, I was going to use the same word, just so you know we're on the same page. I agree with you. I think as a country, the soul of this country right now, we're fucked. Because as bad as Trump is, and I blame him because he is the commander in chief, but it's really the enablers, the sycophants that are surrounding him, that he put into these positions of power. I believe that they are equally accountable for everything that's happening here. Because listen, Trump just wants to play golf. He wants leaders to call him. He wants to fly around on Air Force One. He wants to host state dinners. He doesn't want to do the work.
Right.
He really does. He doesn't want to read. He doesn't want to read the papers, the memos on this. He wants to legislate from the gut. And these people, like Elon Musk, like Lutnick, like Bessent, like Kristi Noem and the rest of them, right? What they're doing is they're feeding him with bad information because there's something deeply, deeply wrong with them.
I couldn't agree more. And I mean, who would know better about, how Trump wants to be president and conduct his day-to-day affairs than somebody that, sat beside him for 15 plus
15 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, a decade and a half. Mike Fanone, thank you so much. I will be the first one today to turn around to say thank you. You are a hero. You're a hero to this country, and keep doing everything that you're doing. You really are truly a hero.
I appreciate that, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend.